You already know the exact sensation of making a choice before you have the vocabulary to defend it. The moment your body simply moves, leaving your mind to figure out the explanation later. That mechanism activates today. At 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time on March 13th, Mars aligns perfectly with the North Node at exactly 8 degrees Pisces. The planet of pure physical drive strikes the exact coordinate of your forward trajectory. It happens in the deep waters of a sign that operates entirely on intuition, bypassing logic completely. Most people think they need a structured plan to step into the space Jupiter just cleared. But today's astrology is built around a specific lock that deliberately denies you the words before the action. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 3 things. First, why Mars meeting the North Node in Pisces demands movement without a map. Second, the hidden echo of 2007 and how a shift you felt almost 2 decades ago is quietly directing you now. Third, the 2-part mechanism between Mars today and Mercury next week, and why your body has to move before your mind is allowed to understand. The ground is open. Stop waiting for the explanation to give you permission to walk on it. This morning, something arrived in the body before you had language for it. Not anxiety, not excitement. Something quieter, a low-level certainty sitting between the chest and the stomach, not asking for permission and not moving on. You didn't generate it. There is a documented reason this happens. Psychologist Gary Klein spent years studying how experienced decision-makers actually decide under pressure. Firefighters, military commanders, intensive care nurses. What he found consistently contradicted the standard model. These people did not analyze options and select the best one. They recognized a pattern, felt a physical signal, and moved. The body compressed decades of experience into a single somatic signal, a pull in the chest, a stillness in the hands, arriving before the analytical mind had processed a single variable. Klein called it recognition-primed decision. In people over 45, this mechanism is not weaker. The pattern library is larger. The signal is cleaner. The only variable that interferes with it is the habit of asking for permission from a system that processes more slowly. Today, Mars forms 3 simultaneous aspects. A conjunction with the North Node at 8 degrees 55 arc minutes of Pisces. A trine to Jupiter in Cancer, recently turned direct after 123 days of retrograde, positioned at its strongest coordinate in the zodiac. A sextile to Uranus in Taurus. 3 separate barriers to the first step, removed in the same geometry in the same hour. The sky is not issuing a directive, it is clearing what stood between you and a direction the body already knows. Before 5:57 p.m., one practice only. Notice where the signal is located in the body, not what it means. The physical location: chest, shoulders, hands, throat. The location is the information. Everything else follows from it. But the signal you're carrying this morning isn't new. It has a history, 18 years of it. And what happened the last time the sky arranged itself exactly this way? That is not a metaphor. The North Node is not a planet. It has no mass, no light, no gravitational pull you could measure with an instrument. It is a mathematical point, the precise location where the moon's orbital path crosses the ecliptic as it moves northward. It travels backward through the zodiac on an 18.6-year cycle. Babylonian astronomers tracked it in cuneiform tablets 5 centuries before the Common Era. They called it the head of the dragon. They understood the rhythm. The current window, January 2025 through July 2026. The previous window, June 2006 through December 2007. In that earlier window, 2 events defined the following 2 decades. January 9th, 2007. Steve Jobs stood on a stage in San Francisco and described a device the world had no language for yet. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator, in one. No market research confirmed the demand. No framework existed for what it would become. The direction was set before the articulation existed. Within 12 months, it had redefined how a generation communicates. February 27th of that same year. Freddie Mac announced it would stop purchasing the riskiest subprime mortgages. By April, New Century Financial filed for bankruptcy. By August, the global credit crunch had begun. That direction had precise language attached to it: secure, diversified, backed. The words were detailed and confident. The direction was toward collapse. One north node in Pisces window, one direction without words that proved transformative. One direction with exact words that proved false, not because the sky caused either event, but because the conditions that produce a collective moment of choosing between intuitive signal and explained narrative tend to arrive in the same window. They are here again. The North Node in Pisces points toward trust, intuition, movement before the map. Directly opposite sits the South Node in Virgo: analysis, verification, the requirement for proof before the step. For those watching between 40 and 65, South Node in Virgo is the default operating mode. You are skilled at finding the flaw in any plan. That skill is real. And today, it is the primary risk. Not because analysis is wrong, because the wave is already moving. This morning, in different cities, people who know nothing about the North Node are already inside its instruction. A woman in her late 50s finally enrolls in the course she's been reviewing for 4 months. A man in his mid-40s sends the email that has been sitting in drafts since November. They are not acting on research or permission. Something in the body simply decided that waiting had finished. If there is a practice before 5:57 p.m., find the direction the body already knows and write it as a vector, not a destination. Not to reach, toward. The North Node does not ask for plans. It asks for orientation. Because there is something about today's geometry almost no one is naming. Mars is not the only signal at this degree. A second planet has been holding this same coordinate since February, and the reason your body must move before your mind is allowed to articulate is not a side effect of today's astrology. It is the deliberate architecture of a two-part lock the sky built across 37 days. On February 11th of this year, Mercury entered its pre-retrograde shadow at 8 degrees 29 arc minutes of Pisces. That day, a coordinate was marked. Mercury continued forward to 22 degrees Pisces, turned retrograde on February 26th, and has been moving backward through this sign for 15 days. Today, Mars arrives at 8 degrees 55 arc minutes, 26 arc minutes from Mercury's station point. On March 20th, Mercury stops its backward motion and turns direct at exactly 8 degrees 29 arc minutes of Pisces. The same coordinate where it began. The lock closes 37 days. Mercury marks a point on February 11th. Mars crosses it today. Mercury returns to the same point on the 20th. This is not a coincidence of degrees. This is the architecture of a sequence. Mercury retrograde in Pisces means the analytical mind has no firm ground. Thoughts begin and don't complete. The word on the tip of the tongue that doesn't arrive. This is not malfunction. This is Mercury having stepped aside so Mars can move without interference. There is a neuroscientific reason why action without words is precision, not weakness. Kahneman's work on System 1 and System 2 documents what happens when deliberative processing is overloaded. Through chronic stress, years of deferred decisions, accumulated unresolved weight. System 2 begins distorting new assessments through status quo bias. System 1, running on decades of pattern recognition, becomes more accurate. Mercury retrograde is the sky temporarily suspending System 2. Not as damage, as cleared space for a cleaner signal. You have felt this sequence before, without the planetary names. The time you made a decision that surprised even yourself, then spent days trying to understand why. Then, the explanation arrived, not constructed, but arrived, as if it had been waiting for you to move first. That is the mechanism operating today at the scale of the sky. There is one detail almost no one names. On March 15th, 38 hours after tonight's conjunction, Mercury retrograde reaches Mars at approximately 10 degrees Pisces, the first contact between the messenger and the step taken today. It will not arrive as clear text. It will arrive as the sensation that words are forming. Then a week of interior ripening. Then, on the 20th, Mercury stops and turns direct. 3 stages: step, first sense of language, full articulation. The protocol from now through March 19th is simple. Take the step. Do not explain it to yourself or anyone else. Mercury is still in transit. The articulation is coming on schedule. Your body does not need it in order to move. The architecture is set. And what it actually feels like in the body, in the specific hours before 5:57 p.m., before the peak, is the next thing. Right now, Mars is within 1 degree of the North Node. In astronomical terms, the 2 points are separated by less than 60 arc minutes, less than the apparent diameter of the full moon. The alignment is already fully active. The body registers proximity before the clock confirms it. If you are experiencing a low-level alertness this afternoon, a clarity that doesn't feel like caffeine, a stillness that doesn't feel like tiredness, that is not imagination. That is the body reading the approach of a coordinate it has been moving toward for longer than today. Neurobiologist Antonio Damasio documented what he called the somatic marker hypothesis through studies of patients with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. These patients retained full intelligence and lost the ability to decide, not because reasoning failed, because they had lost access to the physical signal that marks one option as right before analysis completes. Without the body signal, the analytical mind cannot choose. With it, the choice is already made. What you are feeling in the chest right now is not uncertainty. It is the marker of readiness. There is also this. Mars today is forming a trine to Jupiter in Cancer, the sign where Jupiter is exalted, recently direct after 123 days of retrograde. The largest planet in the solar system at its most precise coordinate of strength, in full geometric support of the first unthought movement of the body. This configuration does not repeat in this combination of signs for decades. Across time zones, the hours before 5:57 p.m. carry the same charge in every city. A man in Toronto who has been holding an unmade decision since December cannot concentrate at his desk. A woman in Lisbon feels an unusual calm she doesn't entirely trust. A man in Seoul sets an alarm for no specific reason, then cancels it. None of them are thinking about Mars. All of them are in the same body of water. There's a documented neurological shift that becomes more pronounced after 45, published in longitudinal studies of adult decision-making. As the brain accumulates decades of pattern recognition, the balance between deliberative and intuitive processing shifts. Older adults do not become less rational, they become more efficient. What feels like just knowing in someone over 50 is thousands of prior pattern recognitions running in parallel at subconscious speed. The signal is not vague, it is dense with information. In the 2 hours before 5:57 p.m., one practice only. Clear 30 minutes of input, then ask the body one question, not the mind, not what should I do? What direction is already set? Then wait for the physical response, not the verbal answer, the location of the signal in the body. That location is the information, 5:57 p.m., the peak of the wave, not a beginning, a confirmation. What that moment actually does in the body in real time is the next thing. Ось п'ята частина сценарію at 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time on March 13, 2026, Mars reaches 8 degrees and 55 arc minutes of Pisces. The North Node stands at the identical coordinate, separated by 0 arc minutes. Simultaneously, Jupiter in Cancer forms a trine of 120 degrees with Mars's position, 780 million kilometers away, at its strongest placement in the zodiac. Uranus in Taurus forms a sextile. 3 separate geometric relationships activate within the same hour. This is the peak. In the body, wherever you are, at 5:57 p.m., whatever you are doing, something registers that does not require your attention to happen. It may arrive as a brief physical stillness, as a moment when the internal noise that has been running for weeks simply goes quiet, as the particular sensation of a decision that has been arguing with itself suddenly stopping the argument. Not because the answer arrived, because the question became unnecessary. The body already answered it. The sky just confirmed the coordinates. Here is what almost no one names about this moment. After 5:57 p.m., Mars continues moving forward. The North Node moves retrograde, backward through the zodiac. They are separating now, and they will not meet again in Pisces for 18 years. This specific configuration, in this sign, with this geometry, exists once in the window you are currently inside, not rare as a description, rare as a mathematical fact. The step this moment asks for does not have to be large. North Node does not fix the scale of the action, it fixes the direction. The difference between a step toward the North Node and a step into familiar routine is not the size of the gesture. It is the quality of what follows in the body, the particular absence of the exhausting need to justify it. At 5:57 p.m., in cities across every continent, something very small and very significant is happening simultaneously. A woman in Chicago sends the message she's been composing since November. A man in London books the appointment he has been avoiding for 3 months. A woman in Nairobi says yes to something she's been finding reasons to delay. None of these actions is large. Each carries the specific quality of a move made from cleared ground. And then, quiet. The particular quiet after a wave breaks, not emptiness, the quiet of completion. One practice for the hour between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. Write one sentence, not a plan. A direction, starting with the word toward, one sentence that names, as simply as possible, where the body signal has been pointing. Mercury turns direct in 7 days at this same coordinate. Give it something to work with, one sentence. That is the entire protocol. The wave broke. The coordinate is set. What remains in the body now, heavier than relief and lighter than certainty, is the next thing. Nothing outside has changed. The same house, the same street, the same list for tomorrow. But something in the body is carrying itself differently tonight. Not lighter, quieter. The specific weight that came from having to justify this direction, to yourself, to others, in your own internal argument, is simply no longer active. Not because the questions are gone, because the questions no longer require an answer before the step. The step is already in motion. This is the physical signature of a move made in the right direction. Not triumph, not the clarity everyone describes. This particular quality, the exhausting need to defend the direction, has dropped away. It is the quietest form of confirmation the body offers. What follows over the next 7 days is not separate from tonight. It is the completion of a sequence the sky opened on February 11th. On March 15th, approximately 38 hours from now, Mercury retrograde reaches the same degree as Mars, around 10 degrees Pisces. This is the first moment the messenger planet touches the direction the body set today. It will not arrive as clear language, it will arrive as the sensation that words are forming, a half sentence, an image, the feeling that something is almost nameable. Mercury is still retrograde, the full articulation is not here yet, but for the first time since February 26th, language is in motion toward the step. Then, a week of interior ripening. The step exists. The words are in transit. This interval is not silence. It is the specific texture of something consolidating before it can be named. On March 18th, a new moon in Pisces forms at 28 degrees and 27 arc minutes. The last full degree of the sign before 0 degrees Aries, less than 2 degrees from the end of the astrological year, the final reset point of a full 12-month cycle. What was placed in the ground tonight is exactly the material this new moon builds upon. You do not need to do anything with this. The placement already happened. The new moon finds it where you left it. On March 20th, Mercury stations direct at 8 degrees 29 arc minutes of Pisces, 6 arc minutes from where Mars stood tonight. The messenger stops its backward motion and turn at the same coordinate where this sequence began, where Mars stood at the peak, where the body set its direction in the absence of language. And on this same day, the sun crosses 0 degrees Aries. The astrological year begins. The step taken tonight in Mercury retrograde, in a sign without words, in a direction without a map, receives its name on the first day of the new cycle. The sky did not arrange this loosely. The precision is the point. Across the world tonight, people who made a move today they cannot yet explain are sitting with the same particular quality of quiet. A woman in her mid-50s in Chicago who sent the message. A man in his early 60s in London who finally booked the appointment. A woman in her late 40s who said yes to something she'd been finding reasons to delay. None of them can fully articulate what they did or why today was different from yesterday. Each of them has stopped trying to explain it. The body settled, the argument ended. The direction is set and it does not require defense. If there is a practice for tonight, it is only this: do not try to complete the sentence yet. You wrote the direction in one word, one phrase, one vector pointing somewhere. Let that stand without addition. Mercury will finish the sentence on March 20th. Between now and then, the only thing asked of you is to remain oriented, not to explain, not to convince, to stay facing the direction the body already chose. Mars crosses the North Node at exactly 5:57 p.m. The physical coordinate is set at 8 degrees Pisces, locking in a direction you cannot yet fully articulate. What remains in the body is a strange, quiet certainty. You have stepped forward, and the exhausting urge to justify it to anyone else has simply dropped away. In 5 days, a new moon in Pisces arrives to offer the final reset of the astrological year. The silent move you made today is the exact ground that new cycle will build upon. Subscribe and stay close. Turn on notifications. What comes next in this sequence is not separate from tonight.